this is an iHeart podcast.
There's nothing like sinking into luxury. At WashableSofas.com, you'll find the Anabe sofa, which combines ultimate comfort and design at an affordable price. And get this, it's the only sofa that's fully machine washable from top to bottom, starting at only $699. The stain-resistant performance fabric slipcovers and cloud-like frame duvet can go straight into your wash. Perfect for anyone with kids, pets, or anyone who loves an easy-to-clean, spotless sofa. With a modular design and changeable slipcovers, you can customize your sofa to fit any space and style. Whether you need a single chair, love seat, or a luxuriously large sectional, Anabe has you covered. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your home. Right now, you can shop up to 60% off store-wide with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Add a little to your life. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
People ask us all the time how we can save the next generation.
We've got our show, and the info is an antidote, but we also have a couple books coming out, Clay.
That's right, and you can pre-order both of them right now and be book nerds just like us.
You'll laugh, you'll nod, and you'll get smarter, too.
Mine's called Balls, How Trump, Young Men, and Sports Saved America.
And mine is Manufacturing Delusion, How the Left Uses Brainwashing, Indoctrination, and Propaganda Against You.
Both are great reads. One might even say they would make fabulous gifts.
Indeed. So do us a solid and pre-order yours on Amazon today.
Welcome in, Tuesday edition, Clay, Travis, Buck Sexton show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us as we embark on another day of truth-telling in what is often a sea of anarchy and frankly lies. We're going to update you on a strike that has taken place inside of Qatar, targeting Hamas leaders who had been running Hamas from there. What the full impact is, we will dive into that and what it means going forward in the Middle East. Again, big story there. These were the Hamas leaders who helped to set in motion the October 7th terror attack. And this was, again, a very targeted strike against the absolute top of Hamas inside of Qatar. Now, there are a lot of different angles to hit on this, and I know you hit on a bunch of them yesterday, Buck, but I have been reading all weekend long and into the start of the week all about what happened in Charlotte, where this young, innocent 23-year-old woman was stabbed in cold blood on public transportation in Charlotte by an individual who'd been previously arrested 14 times. And I know you talked about this some yesterday, Buck, but my Twitter feed and my email has been blown up from people talking about the veterinarian in Auburn, Alabama, who was murdered also by another individual that should have never been out on the streets. And I know many of you out there have seen these stories, but it's important to recognize that by and large, there is no coverage of stories like these in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, at CNN, MSNBC. They mostly ignore it because it tells a story that they do not want to address or even acknowledge in any way. And in fact, when they do cover it, it's often covered through the prism of, oh, people on the right are upset about this event. As if that is the reason why it should be covered. And I know you dove into this, and we've talked about it a lot on the program, but I don't think you can solve major issues of violent crime in this country until we have an actual conversation about where violent crime is coming from. And overwhelmingly, violent crime in this country is clustered in black neighborhoods, often involving young black men. That is a reality. It makes people uncomfortable to even mention, because, oh my goodness, it's racist in some way. And in fact, I want to play this audio clip that I think is emblematic of being fearful of actually addressing the issue at hand. And this was from CNN, where they talk about it only in the context of, well, some people online are upset about this. And this is Brian Stelter on CNN saying the Charlotte murder is just a political symbol. And unfortunately, in his mind, many things that are being said online are, quote, baldly racist. So listen to cut 2.
This story has trickled up from local news to social media and now to the president's attention. And it's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
Okay. Well, I think this is an important conversation we should have, Buck, and I know you talked about it some yesterday. It is not racist to point out the race of someone who commits a violent crime. Here is what, let me just make it clear, because I think this is important. And I know you guys get it, but maybe in your conversations, you're nervous about having conversations about this because you're afraid of being called racist. Here is what is racist. Being racist is saying, hey, you're going to commit a crime because you are black, with no evidence whatsoever of that being the case, right? That is racism. It is not racist to look at data and say, boy, of all the murders that are being committed in America, the vast majority, if you analyze it from a per capita basis, are being committed by young black men. And we should have a conversation about why that is, because the data actually reflects that if young black men committed, for instance, rates of violent crime at the same rate as white or Asian young men do, we basically wouldn't have a violent crime rate in the United States that is anywhere approaching what we have here now, right? I mean, it would actually be at least 2 or 3 times as safe of a country.
If you were to eliminate just the disparity in the black crime rate in this country, I believe we would be, on a per capita basis, have fewer homicides than Canada. So that gives you some sense of, which has actually, I think, had some crime problems in more recent years. But there's a huge disparity by the numbers. But I wanted to focus in on, for a moment, of course, Stelter. Who, what did Tucker used to call him? Like the village eunuch or something like this? I mean, he had some phrase for him that was particularly, Brian Stelter is really a perfect representation of, like low T, liberal, the future is feminine, the white male that the Democrat Party is essentially comprised of, first and foremost. And for him to say that it raises questions, no, I don't think it actually raises questions. We have the answers, Clay.
Yeah.
When someone has been arrested 14 times, when they've sexually assaulted women, or assaulted women, I think I should, violently assaulted women 2 times previously, this is somebody who needs to be taken out of circulation for a while. And you want to try rehab, you want to try to, to bring Jesus into his life, you want to make him a better person, fine. Do so in a facility, also known as a prison. That is the reality that we have to deal with here, okay? That is what has to happen. The decision was made here over and over again to let this individual continue to terrorize people. And we have to ask why. What is the mindset? We're going to have on a state senator from, or is it a state senator or
Congressman, I think. Congressman,
I'm sorry.
Tim Moore. Yeah,
Thank you.
Who represents this area.
From North Carolina, represents this area. We'll ask about what the processes are, if there are any, to hold judges accountable. It's very hard in general. Clay could go into this at length. It's very hard in general to hold judges accountable for anything. You can, there's a process, but it's difficult. But we should ask, why did this judge decide to let this guy go effectively unpunished? It's not like he just got out of a 25-year sentence and decided to reoffend. I mean, this guy was wandering around the streets and was obviously a threat to people. So, Clay, I completely reject this. Oh, there are legitimate questions, Stelter's, the legitimate questions raised by the way the system may have failed. No, this is actually the system giving the product that the system wants to give, which is higher crime rates, more risk to the general population, more risk to women, more risk to minorities disproportionately, because it makes certain people feel better about themselves because they think some of this conversation is icky.
That's the essence of it. a lot of people are uncomfortable with acknowledging what the data shows. And to me, you cannot address an issue until you objectively and rationally examine it. And this is why I said the whole BLM protest was focused on something that basically doesn't happen very often. That is violent white attacks on black people because of their race. It's almost non-existent in the country. Not say that it never happens. It's almost non-existent. In fact, if you go look at the data, the number of white people that engage of violent acts against black people is almost zero. And statistically.
And it's also true, Clay, we talked about this yesterday. It's also true that police killing or even using excessive force against unarmed black men statistically is very, very rare. But isn't it fascinating, Clay? We can have one after another suicide bomber all yelling Allahu Akbar, all from the same religious background, all having similar profiles, and we're told that's not representative. That doesn't count. There's no problem there. But then there'll be one cop involved in one incident whether it's George Floyd or Mike Brown, and whole neighborhoods have to burn down and everybody has to sit around and bend the knee and beg forgiveness for the past wrongs. I have done nothing. I have done nothing racist. I am not a part of any racist system, and I absolutely reject all of that crap. And I think people have just realized that's where you got to be with this. You can't play the game anymore.
Well, and here's where I think the media very often is incredibly flawed. And we talk about this, and I know many of you think about it. I don't know that you really think about it on a central level. Most of media today is anecdote. And I think that is exacerbated by everybody having a cell phone. And so any incident can go viral. To me, an honest media only covers anecdote when it is representative of a larger issue that needs to be addressed.
It should align with the data, but we see the opposite, where they actually try to pretend the anecdote is the data or representative of the data. This is why it is a lie. It is a lie by statistics, or it is a lie by the omission of reality.
And so and you all know this, but if that had been a young black girl, 23-year-old, sitting on that public transit in Charlotte, and a white guy had stabbed her in the throat, every single television station in America would lead with it for multiple days. We would all have to have national conversations about what
blame
that
Trump,
represented.
by the way. They would say, this is what happens in Trump's America. They would take it right to Trump. You and I know that.
And so if you are not treating this in a similar fashion, and by the way, all of you out there in right-wing land, although I would submit it is just sanity land, who are listening to us right now, all of you would be immersed in that story. You would not be able to avoid it because right-wing media would cover it too. Well, the left basically doesn't cover this story. All of you are aware of it, but I think it's important that we have this conversation.
Clay, we could just take calls, and we have before, where we have black listeners to this show who will just call in and say that we are discussing the reality of the media's treatment of these subjects. We could just take calls for an hour from people listening right now to our audience who are black, who would say, yeah, the media's playing games here. It's the media that is doing the misrepresentation. It's the media that is bringing these narratives, and the Democrat Party and all this stuff about structural racism and everything else. They bring ideology into this. We just want there to be less crime. We want everyone to be safer. We want to do what is necessary so that nobody, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Christian, Muslim, Jew, no one's getting stabbed on the subway. That's actually the goal here. And then we treat everyone as an individual, but treating people as individuals also means viewing their right to be safe walking down the street in their neighborhood as more important than what your friends at the golf club, after you're done with your MSNBC hit in Chevy Chase, think about what you said on TV.
And objective data, if we are going to truly address violent crime, objective data reflects that young black men in particular overwhelmingly are responsible for violent crime. So, if we are going to put more police on the streets, and if we are going to address violent crime, that is going to lead to more young black men being arrested. That's not racism. again, I think this kills the argument, but I think it's one good one to put in your back pocket. It's not sexism that men are arrested for around 95% of all violent crimes. It's because men are more violent as a group than women are. Okay. So, I think this story is huge. I think it goes to the essence of, frankly, where Trump is right, which is saying we can't live in a country where violent crimes like these are allowed to happen. And when the people perpetrating them have been arrested 14 times.
Well, this is the other part. There's so many layers here, Clay. There's failure of the narrative the Democrats want to tell you. There's the lie that we can all see. I told you. I mean, I was laughing my butt off watching the Jussie Smollett documentary. I mean, it is high comedy that anyone believes. But let's remember, Clay, first of all, he was fine. He had like a tiny scratch. It looked like he maybe cut himself shaving. And it was a national outrage.
Yes.
Kamala Harris was weighing in. I mean,
Still
Joe
up.
Biden was weighing in. It's still up. There was a huge, oh my gosh, look at this. All the racism against black people, all the anti-LGBTQ, all this stuff. All a lie. Okay. But that was immediate national conversation. A Ukrainian refugee brutally murdered because the system completely failed her because the system is too afraid of looking like it's racist when it enforces the law. That's actually not a conversation we should have as a country. Which one of those things matters more to the American people in their daily lives? We got to force this issue.
No doubt. And here's another one I'll add. I think that this doesn't help the black community because, one, it allows violence to continue, but two, liberal white people who are trying to say, oh, we can't have this conversation, they actually don't want things to get better. And I think a lot of black voters are slowly starting to recognize this. These people don't have your best interest at heart. They don't at all. We'll talk about this more because I do think it's a really big story. Identity theft can cost more than you think. If you thought having your wallet stolen was bad, having your online identity stolen is 10 times worse. Drained investment accounts, lost wages, stolen tax returns. The list is endless. That's why LifeLock is backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. Covers up to $3 million for the most comprehensive plan. So if your money's stolen due to identity theft, LifeLock has your back. If you have personal expenses while resolving identity theft, like paying for travel or extra childcare, LifeLock will reimburse you as well. When you invest hours of your time piecing your life back together and it causes you to lose work income, LifeLock will reimburse you too. Plus, there's coverage if you need to pay fees for lawyers and experts to resolve your case. Join now. Save up to 40% in your first year with my name, Clay, as the promo code. Call 1-800-LifeLock or go to lifelock.com. Promo code Clay to save 40%. Terms apply.
Saving America. One thought at a time. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Find them on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? WashableSofas.com has your back. Featuring the Anabe Collection, the only designer sofa that's machine washable inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slipcovers made with performance fabrics. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Check out WashableSofas.com and get up to 60% off your Anabe sofa, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
All right, welcome back into Clay and Buck. Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, is speaking about the DeCarlos Brown murder, alleged murder on that light rail. Let's hear what the press secretary has to say. Play.
This monster should have been locked up, and Iryna should still be alive. But Democrat politicians, liberal judges, and weak prosecutors would rather virtue signal than lock up criminals and protect their communities. And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer. Here's the truth that every American must know. Too many innocent people across the country continue to pay the price of the failed experiment known as cashless bail that has been championed by the Democrat Party for years. All the way back in 2020, North Carolina's then Democrat Governor Roy Cooper established a so-called task force for racial equity in criminal justice. Sounds nice, but it's not. That task force was co-authored by then Attorney General and current Democrat Governor Josh Stein. It recommended, quote, reimagining public safety to, quote, promote diversion and other alternatives to arrest. It also advised to de-emphasize some felony crimes, prioritize, quote, restorative justice, and eliminate cash bail. Democrats in North Carolina and nationwide are consumed with pushing a woke, soft-on-crime agenda, no matter how many innocent Americans suffer as a result. Instead of aggressively prosecuting and locking up violent criminals, the Democrat-backed cashless bail approach lets these criminals roam free in our country to offend again and again. These reckless policies have turned too many of American cities into hunting grounds for career criminals who mock our justice system, drain law enforcement resources, and wreak havoc on law-abiding citizens. Enough is enough, and that is why President Trump is doing everything in his power by taking action to undo these absurd policies. The president recently signed a powerful executive order directing the AG to submit a list of states and local jurisdictions with cashless bail policies so that the Trump administration may identify federal funds that are being provided to these states and can potentially be suspended or terminated. President Trump firmly believes that to maintain order in public safety, we must incarcerate individuals whose pending criminal charges or criminal history demonstrate a clear, ongoing risk to civil society. This is a common sense and sensible approach that the vast majority of Americans agree with, and it's time for the Democrat Party to get on board with what is right. When these criminals are caught, they must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and be sent to prison, where they can no longer terrorize our streets. This is the mandate the American people delivered to President Trump, and it's a mandate he intends to fulfill. Staying on the topic of public safety, new preliminary data released today by Customs and Border Protection in August shows that President Trump has delivered the most secure border in American history. For the fourth straight month, 0 illegal aliens were released into the United States.
All right, so Clay, let's come back here. Although I will say that's a very important stat she just threw out there. She was switching that the border is entirely secure. I want to get to the conversation about criminal justice, of course, but she just threw that in there at the end as we were transitioning out of our live feed. The border is secure in terms of illegal alien crossings. This isn't, if you had told me that Trump had achieved an 80% or 90% reduction, I would say, wow, that's really a remarkable turnaround. Great success. It's more like a 99 point something percent reduction. It's almost a totally secure border, at least when it comes to illegal crossings. So, that's one piece of this. But I think Caroline Leavitt, obviously fired up about this. I mean, she's a young woman. She's a young mom. She's a wife. She has to, she knows what it is to be on public transit. She probably takes the subway in DC, metro, they call it in DC sometimes. I think for women in particular, Clay, who see this video, it is their worst imaginable horror that they're just going through their day and some maniac stabs them with a knife from behind for absolutely no reason. And although I know there are people that are starting to ask, well, what was the motivation behind this? And was there a hate crime angle to this? Notice that's not being talked about very much. But nonetheless, Clay, the feelings that people have about this coming out right now, I think it's important, it's powerful, and it's good that the White House is addressing it.
Yeah. And again, the end goal here should be we should drive down the number of murders in this country massively. And this is one of those things that sometimes I can't believe that Democrats are lined up in opposition to this. Because I just don't see this as a remotely partisan issue. Everyone out there should be in favor of way lower rates of violent crime. And for Democrats basically to come out and say, well, rates of violent crime are actually getting better. Okay. I hope that's true. to a large extent, better just means we're going back to what the numbers looked like before the BLM protests and COVID. That was still too high. So I don't understand why you wouldn't extend your hand. I give credit to Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. for saying, this is something I want to work with the president on. Let's actually make it safer. Buck, I saw the numbers shared the other day. Murders are down 60% in Washington, D.C. since Trump mobilized the National Guard and took control of the crime issues in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't know that he can do that over the course of a year or over the course of a couple of years. I would hope that he can. But even if he can't, there are dozens of kids, and I say kids because most of them are young, that are going to be walking around in D.C. this fall that would otherwise be dead if the president hadn't taken that action. How can you say that's a bad thing? And the number of left-wing white people, because I look at these protests and it's all white people walking around saying we don't want more troops on the streets, we don't want more cops. They live in such a crazy fantasy world, and their brains are so broken that what they're basically doing is marching in favor of violence, overwhelmingly directed at young black and brown people, which is ostensibly what the entire purpose of Black Lives Matter was, right? Now, it was flawed because the premise of BLM was, oh, cops are the reason why young black men are being killed at high rates. It's not actually true at all. Young black men are being killed at high rates by other young black men. No one, well, if you look at the data, is able to argue anymore, Buck, that police are somehow the problem. You're seeing how many lives police protected because as soon as they weren't able to do their job, murder rates skyrocketed.
We're also seeing a shift in perception that is related to an old, long-standing policy of lib news organizations. And I remember a perfect example of this is New York One is a channel in New York, Clay, New York City, that is, if Pravda was like transported from the Soviet Union to New York City, it would be New York One. I mean, it is so left wing. It is so all about whatever the party needs, whatever the committee decides, of the left. But you could see there, you could see it on local news as well. There, and I watched this. I watched local news in New York growing up, right? I would watch these different channels. I actually had an aunt who was a well-known local news broadcaster, for many years in New York. And she's the one with red hair, for those of you who are wondering. And, the common thing you'd see is, oh, well, there was a report today of a violent maniac, like chasing somebody and hitting somebody in the head with a rock. And we have, a suspect here. The suspect is 5'10", 185 pounds and male. But then they'd also sometimes show they'd show like a sketch, a police sketch. And you go, okay, so this is a black guy. But they wouldn't say that. They would often just leave out the description of the suspect by race. They would just describe it as a man, 185 pounds. And this became more and more common. Also, they remove the racial descriptor from headlines, depending on who it is. If a white guy stabs somebody to death in Staten Island, trust me, they're going to make sure you all know that it's a white guy who stabbed somebody to death. They do this. This has been long-standing policy that they won't describe the race of a perpetrator if the race is black or Hispanic, generally speaking. Local news, a lot of others, or they'll try to bury it far down. This has changed, though, Clay, because of body cameras, because of surveillance cameras, and because of the free sharing of that information on X. So now whenever there's a really nasty crime that occurs somewhere in the country, what producer Allie just sent us something. Didn't they drive like a truck into a watch store or something, and they beat some 88-year-old guy? I mean, whenever there's we get to see who's doing it. So the media can tell us as much as they want that we're not actually observing a pattern, but people are observing a pattern because they can see on the video what is happening in this instance and in many other cases just like it.
And this is where I come back to, at its best, the job of the media should be to take anecdote and utilize it to tell a story about why something larger matters. Because all of us respond to individual stories better than we do raw data. So you can sit back and say, hey, the rate of violent crime in Memphis, Tennessee is whatever it is per 100,000, and you can put that into a flow chart. And some people, you and I would be data nerds who would look at this and say, oh, let's address this. Most people don't respond to numbers. They respond to story. And so the murder of the 23-year-old young Ukrainian girl on video as it was is actually illustrative of rates of violent crime that are too high. And so the same thing happening with Laken Riley and her murder in Athens, Georgia. All of these are crystallizing larger issues that exist. The problem with left-wing media is they largely tell stories that are not representative of larger issues. Like, I don't know if you talked about this yesterday, but compare how Daniel Penny on public transit in New York City responding to a violent person who has a long history of crimes in the past, who was making threats on public transportation. Look at how that response was covered. I mean, they charged him with a crime compared to how it's been covered in the Washington Post, for instance, or MSNBC and CNN, what happened on the public transit in Charlotte. I mean, it's impossible to justify that from a news gathering perspective.
You know, the Blaze and others have reported this, Clay, but I haven't seen this getting more widespread coverage yet. But we looked into this. We've played the audio. We've put it through Grok. We've put it through. By the way, AI also is playing a role in all of this, too, because people can get instantaneous answers about so much now without the filter of communists running Google. So Grok is a fantastic tool. But when you look at Grok, DeCarlos Brown, the guy who stabbed this girl, I know people get sometimes frustrated when we say allegedly. I mean, technically it is allegedly. He hasn't actually been convicted yet, but it's all on video. He says, I got that white girl multiple times on the video. That seems like assuming that is factual and accurate, which again, the Blaze, where I used to work, has reported this as accurate and the video is out there. That seems to be another detail of the story that people should become familiar with and understand. Well, that changes things a bit as well, doesn't it? And when we look at motivation.
I'm with you. We'll come back to this, where hate crimes in general, I think, are... I care about the crime, not as much the motivation for why the crime was done. But again, if this is one of those situations where you say, if we reverse the races, if a white guy stabbed a little, young, innocent black girl, like this young, innocent white girl was, and then the white guy is saying, I got that black girl, it's the lead story on CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post for weeks. There might well be riots in the streets. All of that. And now this has happened in Charlotte, and to a large extent, much of the audience that consumes that video, those outlets, has no idea it happened. Okay, much less serious, infinitely less serious. We won in Prize Picks over the weekend, Buck. Week 1, big winner, CeeDee Lamb, with the pick there. With the pick on Saquon, as Buck likes to call him, Saquon Barkley, and with the pick on Josh Allen, we won 4.25x. So if you played last Thursday along with us, week 1 NFL action, you have quadrupled your money. So if you put $5 down, $20, you can go get a Big Mac meal. You are rolling, baby. And hopefully you just had a little bit more fun. That's what we want you to do with Prize Picks. You can play it in California. You can play it in Texas. You can play it in Georgia. You can play it in Florida. You can play it in 40 states now. 13 million of you have subscribed. On Thursday, I will give you a week 2 pick. Fingers crossed that we can win again, but go ahead and sign up. You get $50 when you play $5. Just for signing up, you get $50. Go to prizepicks.com. Use my name, Clay. NFL season is here. If you want to have a little bit more fun with the games, hopefully we can string several of these wins during the course of the season. Week 1, big winner. Can we win in week 2? Prizepicks.com, code Clay. That's prizepicks.com, code Clay.
News you can count on, and some laughs too. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Find them on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in. Hour number 3, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We are joined now by North Carolina Congressman Tim Moore, leading a response to the murder of a Ukrainian woman on the Charlotte Light Rail. I should mention there are more videos coming out of the stabbing, and you can see no one coming to this young woman's aid, despite the fact they can see her clearly being stabbed. I would suggest, and I know this is dark and it is uncomfortable, but Congressman, as we bring you in, why has the full video not been released? And I don't say that because I am in favor of showing violent acts, but I do think it's important that we see what actually happens. And certainly if you think about the George Floyd video, the entire George Floyd video was shared and used to drive the burning of so many American cities and to set an artificial narrative about police. The narrative that there is far too much violent crime and that criminals who are arrested are let far too often back on the streets is one that is actually accurate. And in the case of this murder, 14-time arrested serial felon who finally decided that he was going to kill and that he was going to say that he was motivated to kill this woman because she was white. And Congressman, you represent a part of North Carolina and also a part of Charlotte. What is the reaction from your constituency, and what do you think about why we have yet to see this full video released?
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on the show. I wish it were under better circumstances, obviously. The reaction of folks that I'm hearing from back home in North Carolina are simply the same thing that you're hearing, the same thing that your listeners are probably feeling when they see this, when they hear about this. It's absolute disgust, and it's a breakdown in the system. And what we've seen time and time again, and particularly in some of the blue, North Carolina is a red county, a red state, but Mecklenburg is a blue county, and we see in a lot of cities around the country where you get these liberal judges that get in there, these liberal magistrates that come in, and they have these woke policies where they are just soft on crime. And to your point, this guy was a convicted felon with a violent rap sheet, had skipped court in the past, had firearms offenses. And this guy, he should have never been on the street where he could do this. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident where this is just like a one-off. I would submit to you these things happen every day throughout our country, which is, by the way, one reason that I'm co-sponsoring with Elise Stefanik a bill to withhold federal funds from states and local governments that fail to adhere to cash bail policies. If these guys are being held under a cash bail, they're going to be in jail. And a lot of people, frankly, they shouldn't even be given bond, where they're such a danger and a menace to society. But this guy clearly should have been in jail.
Congressman, we appreciate you being here with us. So you have signed a letter. All 10 members of the North Carolina House, these are Republicans, obviously, they're demanding the removal of unelected magistrate judge Teresa Stokes, who released this repeat offender who went on. Tell us about this process, and is it likely to succeed to try to have this judge removed? Because I know state by state these rules can be very different.
Yeah, so this is a magistrate judge. So matter of fact, my understanding is she graduated law school but never even passed the bar exam. And I've been I've been an attorney for 30 years, so I kind of know this stuff. But she can be removed by the district court judge. She's not elected, and she should be. And I felt so, I'm the only Republican who represents, Charlotte in Congress. The other members are Democrat who represents most of Charlotte. But it's just disgusting this happened, and she has no business being a judge and being a magistrate if she doesn't have any better discernment than to let someone like this loose on the streets. I mean, this guy should have been in jail. This should have never happened.
I can't believe she didn't pass the bar. But let's go into this, because I think you're raising a really interesting question. I've trying to do the math. I've been a lawyer for 21 years now, so I have managed to pass a couple of bar exams over the years. We talked about the analogy, which I've seen shared, and I do think it's an interesting one, that if you are a bartender and you overserve someone, and as you well know, I'm sure, Congressman, if you're a lawyer, there are significant consequences for bartenders. At times, they can even be criminally prosecuted for over-serving people who they know are a danger to the larger community, and they allow to engage in violent behavior as a result partly of their action. How do we have higher standards for bartenders than we do for judges?
That's a shame, isn't it? It certainly is. And look, for folks to run for judge, all they have to do is be an attorney in good standing and get elected, right? And I would say the vast majority of elected judges do a good job, but you do have some out there that are just so far left. But one thing we've talked about doing is actually finding is to your point about like with the bartender, like in the dram shop laws, where they can be held civilly responsible for any injuries that happen as a result of serving someone who drinks too much when having a wreck. We're actually looking right now at personal liability for a judge who turns someone loose and then goes out and commits a crime thereafter. Maybe that's the way to get people's attention. I mean, that's actually a bill that we're in the drafting phases right now. Clearly, we're going to look at constitutional provisions and whatnot. But I think there ought to be some accountability. I mean, if somebody is doing something this bad, they ought to be responsible for it.
And so, what do you think about the moves by the federal government because of this White House, the Trump administration, to at least offer up and perhaps even get a little more forceful than that, assistance from the federal law enforcement side to try to help cities that are truly crime plagued?
It's amazing to me that we have some of these liberal Democrat governors around the country, and I look at what's happening in Chicago and some of these other some of these liberal mayors who hate Donald Trump more than they love their communities and more than they love and care about the people they are supposed to represent. I mean, so many of these communities. I'm talking to you from the District of Columbia right now, right? I mean, and I'm a new member of Congress. I've been here 8 months, and I showed up here and what I saw up here was a friggin' goat rodeo in terms of the amount of crime and homelessness and drugs. It's just embarrassing. It's our nation's capital. And I'm glad that the president stood up and, did something. Like I sent in there, and it's actually has a safer feeling. I hope it's sustained. But this president has shown this is not a political stunt. The president has offered this up to help, to help the people that live in these cities. Because you know what? When it comes to crime, it shouldn't be Republican, Democrat. But guess what? These Democrats are making it a partisan issue. And I'm hopeful. I'm so hopeful that the people are paying attention to this. And because where there's an opportunity to get help, folks ought to take it. Because look at Chicago. I mean, they're overwhelmed. But and back in North Carolina, the point there, I think we can kind of surgically say in that case, it's some of these loose bail policies being adopted by some of these liberal judges. I mean, it really is going to require all of the above to make our cities safe again.
Congressman, North Carolina is a super fascinating state, as you well know. Because there's a very big difference between, let's say, the left-wing college communities that encircle some of the campuses and the people who live in western North Carolina or the people who live in other rural parts of North Carolina. It's a very different state, meaning there's a lot of variety. But doesn't it unite everyone to say, hey, to your point, we just want to be safe in the state of North Carolina, in our big cities, white, black, Asian, Hispanic? You hit on it, but I talked about it earlier. I've been talking about it a lot on the show. I'm staggered that the Democrat response to evidence of high rates of violent crime is, well, it's a little bit better than it used to be, as if that's somehow a good thing.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing that I've seen, and I will tell you that my district that I represent, I have urban areas in it, but I have some very rural areas. I mean, I have a lot of the mountains of North Carolina that were ravaged by Hurricane Helene. In fact, it's a big district, and what I hear across that entire geographic area and across the political spectrum is people saying enough is enough of this crime. Enough is enough of a broken criminal justice system that values the rights of criminals over the rights of people who are just trying to be law-abiding citizens going about their business. I mean, think about this. This young lady, fled Ukraine, coming to America for safety, is on a light rail train, is a passenger there, as she'd gotten off work, and this evil guy just stabs her in the neck. And then the other thing on the video, you asked about the video. I don't know why the rest of the video hasn't been released. I mean, it may be to respect the victim. I don't know.
I understand that argument, but sometimes you have to see a video in its totality to really shock the conscience. And so I just would implore anybody listening out here in North Carolina, and I bet you would probably agree with me. I'll let you answer it too. But to me, we need the full unedited video of what happened to understand the scope of evil, and we should have to watch it, those of us who are adults, obviously, to recognize what we have allowed to occur. Because it's one thing if a violent perpetrator out of nowhere acts. The guy was arrested 14 times. I think the guy deserves a second chance, third chance. Nobody deserves a 15th chance. I'm sorry. And so I want to get your reaction to that, but I think we need to stare into evil and see it.
I think people need to see it. It's ugly. And there's a video there's been additional video released. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but there's one showing right after he stabbed her, and she's there, and nobody on the damn train even is doing anything to help her. I'm like, I I just saw that maybe like 15 minutes before I just came on the show with you, and I'm still kind of stunned by seeing that no other people on that train did a thing to help this lady. I mean, that's terrible. I don't even know what to say about it.
We have shared these videos, and they're dark and disturbing, and I would encourage you, I know a lot of people, kids, grandkids, they don't need to watch this. But I think every adult, you need to steel your soul, and you need to watch it because you need to see what evil is capable of, and you need to look at it, and you need to think we all can do better, and we got to get these people off our streets, and we got to hold them accountable.
Well, it absolutely, and this should be a call to action. And what's been amazing, there's been a few of us that have been digging around trying to find out what happened because a lot of the details were kind of murky as to what exactly occurred. And when the video got released is when a few of us were making noise about this is terrible. Why is nobody talking about it? And then, of course, you guys are talking about it and others are. But, mainstream media is just now kind of sort of begrudgingly in some ways coming along talking about this. And it's just, crime is crime. And to your point, evil is evil. And I do think there's just a reminder of people to be vigilant, to be aware, to understand that evil is out there and that we need to be able to protect ourselves. We need to be able to have a firearm, to protect ourselves from something. But it's a sad state too when, there aren't folks who, when they see this, that don't intervene and try to help and try to render aid. I do think it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch, but you know what? We need to stare it in the face and we need to deal with it. But I'm going to tell you something. This president's not sitting idly by, and this Congress is not sitting idly by. I say we're looking at legislation right now that's like, all right, enough is enough. These communities are going to do things that do not follow the law and consistent law when it comes to cash bail, then there's going to be consequences, and that may be losing federal dollars. Who knows? That may be the only thing that'll get some of these folks' attention. I don't know.
North Carolina Congressman Tim Moore, appreciate you being with us, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
I hate to say it, but a lot of people out there in the wake of what they are seeing of violence all over the country are deciding to protect themselves. And sometimes that protection can be of a lethal variety. And a lot of you have decided that you want to buy guns and you want to protect you and your family in that way. But also a lot of you have non-lethal methods that you want to be providing to your kids, to your grandkids, to your different homes out there. And that's what Sabre does. They are non-lethal. They've got pepper spray projectiles for self-protection. And these are amazing when it comes to protecting you without having a lethal component to it. They also have so many different pepper sprays, so many different protective devices for your home. If you are feeling, as many of us are, like you need to make sure that you are protecting your family from the violent criminals out there that would do them harm, I would suggest you go to saberradio.com. You can save 15% off right now, and you can see what might make sense for you and your family. If you got daughters and granddaughters going off to college, maybe you've got kids out there, teenagers that are working their first summer jobs, and now they're continuing those jobs into the fall. New school season. Maybe you got new drivers, and you want to be able to have protective devices for them in the car. We've got a 17-year-old with a driver's license now. We have all sorts of protective devices, pepper spray for him inside of the car in the event that something happens to him. I use Sabre products for my own family. I would encourage you to see what they have available to see if it makes sense for your family, and I think it probably will. SaberRadio.com. 15% off there right now. SABRE radio.com. That's SaberRadio.com. SABRE radio.com.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Mic drops that never sounded so good. Find them on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Time for a sofa upgrade? Visit WashableSofas.com and discover Anabay, where designer style meets budget-friendly prices, with sofas starting at $699. Anabay brings you the ultimate in furniture innovation with a modular design that allows you to rearrange your space effortlessly. Perfect for both small and large spaces, Anabay is the only machine-washable sofa inside and out. Say goodbye to stains and messes with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics that make cleaning easy. Liquid simply slides right off. Designed for custom comfort, our high-resilience foam lets you choose between a sink-in feel or a supportive memory foam blend. Plus, our pet-friendly, stain-resistant fabrics ensure your sofa stays beautiful for years. Don't compromise quality for price. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your living space today with no-risk returns and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get up to 60% off plus free shipping and free returns. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Look, we've got a lot of people reacting to the heinous murder of a young, innocent Ukrainian woman, and that includes the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who, Buck, you and I have talked about this for years, has an innate ability to make the people in the media who hate him talk about what he wants them to talk about, and I think it's going to be very difficult for them not to cover as this video continues to come out. Let me also say this before we play the audio. Buck, are you with me that the full video has to come out? Or do you think that it should be not released? What's your take on that in general?
Yes. It
should come out.
I think the whole video should come out. I mean, I said this is, I'm not recommending ever watch the full video, but for people who want to understand exactly what happened there, yes, the full video, the full video should come out. The full George Floyd video came out.
I agree with you. I think when the full video comes out, it becomes increasingly difficult not to cover it. The fact that they have censored and
by the way,
edited
this is
it.
far more heinous than what happened to George Floyd. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying in terms of let people see what they need to see to make the judgments about what happened. That's the comparison here.
No doubt. Okay, here is President Trump. This is just in the last 30 minutes or so, releasing this statement. It's two different cuts. We'll play cut one. We might react to it. I'll call for more if we don't want to react to it yet. But here is Trump reacting to the murder of this young, innocent 23-year-old Ukrainian woman on public transit in Charlotte.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people, really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. A beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests.
Okay, let's play cut 2. Here, Trump continues.
We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot. And it's time to stop this madness. The people of our country need to insist on protection, safety, law, and order. We have proven that it can be done because we did it right here in D.C., in District of Columbia. The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way. It can be done. It can happen fast. All we want is, please, Mr. President, we need help. Chicago needs help. Other cities needs help. We'll do what has to be done because we're going to make America safe again. And that includes our big cities. We're going to make those cities safe.
Fuck, this is, again, take away Trump and just pretend that you had never heard anybody make any statement about Trump in your entire life. This is the least controversial, most nonpartisan goal that any politician could ever have. There are too many murders, and we're going to do whatever we can to drive down the rates of violent crime in major cities across America. Sometimes I just think you have to step back and just look at this logically. There's no way to be opposed to this.
The Democrat apparatus would rather the murder rate continue where it is instead of accepting that Trump is right, accepting that the right is right, and accepting that there will be a disproportionate rate of incarceration from increased enforcement of the law, which will affect a very small percentage overall, but some black men in this country, as well as, by the way, Latino men in some jurisdictions are considerably overrepresented in the incarceration rates, but it depends where you are. New York, for example, is a jurisdiction where that is the case. And they would rather the murder rate continue than to accept those things, that those things will happen. Trump is right. The right has been correct. And you're going to have disproportionate or disparate impact, dare I say, from the enhanced enforcement of these laws, or really just enforcement of them. And instead of giving people 15th and 50th chances, deciding that enough is enough. So I think Trump is on very, very solid ground with this. And you'll notice, Clay, I read a description of restorative justice in one of the breaks. I was just curious to see what I know what it is. I've heard people talking about it for a long time. It's the kind of idea that people who are living in some other reality or on some other planet would come up with, which is we're gonna have victims. We're going to have perpetrators reconcile with victims. How do you do that in a case like this? What reconciliation is there going to be for the maniac who stabs some girl to death in the throat for absolutely no reason other than perhaps racial animus, which now is coming out as well based on the audio? What are you like? What are they even talking about when they say that we need to have restorative justice? How about just justice? How about just the closest? By the way, you can argue, I think, very unfortunately, tragically, very effectively, that there's no such thing as justice because you can't give this girl her life back. But you can try to stop the next one, and you can take this person out of society so he can't threaten or harm another person. And you can try to prohibit or try to prevent more of this from happening from others who see if I do this, I'm going to be punished by the state in a way that makes me very unhappy. You know, not that I'm going to go to some rehabilitation center and be treated with kid gloves.
I've got my anger has grown all weekend. I watched this video, and that's why I think the full video has to be released. We have to rectify the system that we have created where we're more concerned about criminals being treated fairly than we are innocent people being victims of crimes. This is basically just a balance, right? And all of life is trying to balance equities in some way. Who is the good person? Who's the bad person? Who behaved in a admirable fashion? Who behaved in a dishonorable fashion? How do we reconcile that in the courts? I think what this situation is emblematic of is we have become far too concerned with how criminals are treated and not concerned enough with how innocent people who are victims of criminals are treated. This should never happen. Let me hit some of your talkbacks. Michael in Arizona listening on News Talk 550 KFYI. What you got for us?
People are missing the big picture here. It's not just a right Republican outrage. It should be an American outrage. Liberal, independent, non-voting, non-caring, white, black, green, yellow, orange, all of it, everybody should be outraged. You shouldn't be able to murder someone like that on a train while you're coming home from work, just sitting there minding your own business and get stabbed. It's disgusting.
Well, I think we've said that quite a lot on the show. This should be nonpartisan. I would echo what he said. VIP email Kyle says, the congressman, we just talked with Tim Moore, says he was surprised no one intervened. The answer is easy. Daniel Penny, Kyle Rittenhouse, people are scared to get involved now. You and I were talking, I don't know if we said this on air or off air. I don't think anybody can anticipate in this situation the stabbing occurring because it occurs so rapidly. This is not a situation where a guy's walking around with a weapon in his hand threatening
there was
someone.
No warning at all. And you can tell from the video, he just stood up and stabbed.
And now, what you and I have said, and again, this is in the video the congressman was referring to, is after the stabbing, the guy walks away on the light rail, this Charlotte public transportation, and no one comes to the girl's aid. This girl is bleeding out.
Yeah.
She has no real idea probably what's happened to her at all because the stabbing happened so fast. It doesn't appear there was any conversation or any interaction between these two at all. She gets stabbed. She looks up at him. He walks past. The weapon is dripping blood. And other people in that section of the train see her leaning over as her blood is starting to pour out, as her life is leaving. And no one does anything at all to comfort her or even offer any support at all. In fact, people stand up and walk away.
Yeah.
That is the lack of humanity we are referencing. Now, if this, again, were a situation where the guy's waving the weapon around, nobody does anything, I think your Rittenhouse example, I think your Daniel Penny example could come into play, where I would say the Daniel Penny analogy, Buck, is particularly apropos, is how in the world can the Washington Post and MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times, although it did happen in New York, justify writing hundreds of articles about Daniel Penny and his behavior and justifying the criminal prosecution brought against him and largely not even cover this story?
Well, this is what we've been getting to the whole time. It shows beyond there's no doubt about the ideological manipulation that goes on with these kinds of stories and either suppression or elevation into the public consciousness, depending on whether it fits a narrative that is preferable to places like the New York Times, the Washington Post. It's interesting as well. I mean, the video is particularly, it's horrific. The additional video, as I'm watching it here, Clay, everyone else on the train is black. She's the only white person on the train. And they leave her and she is bleeding to death. I don't even see anyone grab a cell phone to call the police. Yeah. Call for aid, call for an ambulance. They essentially leave her to die. And there's no action taken from anyone there. Now, I understand you could say, well, maybe somebody was looking at their phone, they didn't see. I'm not indicting any individual in this video, but I'm saying collectively in the video, it is quite clear some people knew what had just happened, and no one did even the bare humanitarian minimum here call the police, see if you can render aid, see if you can, you don't have to be a first responder to know you got to stop the bleeding. This woman just got stabbed in the neck. No one's taking their shirt off. No one's trying to make a tourniquet or a compress here. Nothing. No one did a darn thing in this video.
And the question, we played the Brian Stelter audio for you, and we'll play some more of your talkbacks when we come back. The question I ask, what percentage of, this is why I think the media coverage, somebody say, well, why do you care? Why do you care what the New York Times writes? Why do you care what the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC? We know, yes, and I love that. I appreciate that we're going to be honest with you every day. If you really want to move all of America, then all of America has to experience a story that is common, right? And you could be a New York Times reader. You could be a Washington Post reader. You could think, hey, I'm informing myself well on the stature and status of this country. And when they don't cover a story, when they don't share factual data with the CNN audience when it comes to crime, MSNBC, we're not commonly having a conversation because they have no idea this is going on.
Clay, without the omnipresence of surveillance cameras and platforms like X that allow for free sharing on the internet, if this had happened 10 years, 15 years ago, people would know. But this would be a local crime story, and we would not know about it.
Yep. Oh, I think cameras being everywhere has created all sorts of complexities. And if you got teenagers out there, I'm talking about serious things. I'm like, hey, knucklehead, maybe don't take that picture. Maybe don't take that video. Maybe don't be sending stuff like crazy all over the place. You're 16, you moron. But I do think in situations like these and in the police body cameras footages, the prevalence of cameras actually allows us to see what actually occurred in a way that has never been the case throughout human history. And I think what we're seeing is the power of media to distort reality is being exposed by the reality being presented in front of all of us. And again, I think that's a very positive thing. We won in our big pick over the weekend, Buck. 3 for 3, 4.25 payout, plus hopefully more to come. And you can get signed up if you are wanting to just have a little bit more fun this football season. If you like to kick back on Saturday and Sunday and watch games, and I know many of you do, I will be at the Georgia-Tennessee game this weekend for Fox's Big Noon. And I love football. I mean, it is what I do to get away from the serious things in life. And I know that many of you are similar to me. Prize Picks can make things a little bit more fun. Hopefully we can all play together and win some games. If you think I'm a moron, you can take the exact opposite side of every pick that I make. But we're going to give you picks every single Thursday. You go to prizepicks.com, username Clay, you get $50. You can play in Texas, Florida, Georgia, California, places you might feel left out in. 40-plus states nationwide. Use my name, Clay, that's C-L-A-Y, prizepicks.com, code Clay to get hooked up today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right, must be present in certain states. Prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. My name, Clay, for $50. You can play with us on Thursday. Hopefully we can win again. Let's keep it rolling. Prizepicks.com, code Clay.
Keep up with the biggest political comeback in world history on the Team 47 podcast. Clay and Buck highlight Trump replays from the week. Sundays at noon Eastern. Find it on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? WashableSofas.com has your back. Featuring the Anabay Collection, the only designer sofa that's machine washable inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slipcovers made with performance fabrics. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Check out WashableSofas.com and get up to 60% off your Anabay sofa, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
This is an iHeart podcast.